Hello everyone, it's me, your average bonehead, Jay, and welcome back to Character Skeleton. In this series, I give an analysis to any given character from any show, movie, or video game, as well as their overall journey, starting with an introduction of the character, their relationships with other characters, all of their major character development moments from beginning to end, and then I close it out with my final thoughts and what I feel the character represents. So let's talk about villains. Everyone knows them and everyone loves them. They're usually the best part of any given story, and they also usually have a wide variety of tropes that they can choose from, with some of my favorites being the pure evil villain, a villain that is comedically pathetic, villains who are comedically dangerous, and villains who are redeemable. But above all, my favorite type of villain are the ones who get a why they did it story, but also have it in a way where while it doesn't justify their actions, you understand where they're coming from. For the longest while, the one I always held in high regard for that trope was Anakin Skywalker. Yes. But recently he's been dethroned by the topic of today's video, the mining bot turned radicalized D-16.
I'm D-16, Orion Pax.
Who is D-16? D-16 is one of the four main characters in the animated Transformers origin movie, Transformers 1. He is a low-class mining bot from the planet Cybertron, where he, as well as the rest of the miners, must go deep into the mines of Cybertron to harvest N.R.G, the lifeblood of all Transformers. Being supposedly born without a transformation cog, D-16, as well as the other miners, cannot transform. But D doesn't seem to mind that, as he appears to be relatively content with his life, just doing his job every day and never questioning anything, leaving all the decisions to their altruistic leader, Sentinel Prime, who D-16 admires greatly. Unfortunately, following their society's protocols is hard to do when you're best friends with Orion Pax, a reckless optimist who wants more out of life, primarily to find the lost matrix of leadership, a grand MacGuffin that will be able to restore Cybertron to its former glory so they won't have to mine for Energon anymore. Of course, this constantly gets Orion into countless amounts of trouble that D-16 always has to bail him out of, or worse, will get dragged into. But one day Orion takes it too far, which ends up getting he and D-16 thrown to the bottom of bottom levels. Later, once their quest to find the Matrix of Leadership begins, D-16 tries to go back to having a more positive outlook on things, as he's someone who wants praise and adoration from the people he looks up to. However, once he finds out that the person he looked up to the most was lying to them, to him, to his face, something in D-16's mind snaps. From this point forward, D-16 is emotionally driven by anger, rage, hatred, and a lust for revenge. Every interaction he has now goes south. Everything becomes an argument, a fight. Everything he talks about now is about destroying, killing the ones who wronged him. And when he finally achieves his goal, he is fully transformed into a tyrannical warmonger who wants to destroy anyone that stands in his way, whether or not there was anything actually to fight. And when his best friend, whom he thought he killed, is reborn and deemed by their god to be worthy, that pushes him over the edge even more. The two have their first of many final battles, resulting in him being banished from their hometown, taking his new tyrannical army with him, planning to wage war on anyone he deems wronged him. But how did we get here? Well, first, let's look at his relationships. You know, for being one of the main characters of this movie, D-16 doesn't really interact with that many characters. I mean, I don't think he shares any true dialogue with Elita 1, and with Bumblebee, he's more so kinda annoyed by him and barely tolerates his existence. Soundwave and Shockwave, despite becoming two of his most loyal followers, also don't share a single line of dialogue with him. These two work with Orion Pax for majority of their screen time, same with the rest of the High Guard, but because D's ideologies align with them, they end up going with him. But now that we got those guys out of the way, let's talk about the three most important characters that D interacts with. First up, would be Starscream. These two only have one scene together, and it's one of those scenes that's kind of actually enhanced and makes more sense with the context of where this dynamic will go in the future, but it is a good way to display how D-16 and Starscream's ideals contrast, with D wanting to be the one who goes out into the front lines and get things done, while Starscream would much rather cower and aim for cheap shots. This of course leads to one of many battles these two will have for power, and ultimately lead to D usurping Starscream, which explains why Starscream then wants to spend the rest of his existence trying to usurp his new leader, to get the power he once lost.
Bear witness! This is the last time I show mercy!
But a more important character to talk about would be Sentinel Prime. Throughout the beginning half of this movie, D-16 worships Sentinel. Sentinel Prime is their honest and altruistic leader, the one who will save them all. And D-16 eats that up for breakfast. Majority of the things he talked about throughout the first half of the movie is wanting the praise of Sentinel. But all of that immediately changes once he learns about Sentinel's betrayal, and how he's been using them, lying to them all, lying to him. D-16 took Sentinel's betrayal personally, and he immediately shifted from wanting to get praise from him to wanting to see him in pieces. D-16 becomes laser focused on killing Sentinel and righting the wrongs. Even though the two don't interact that much, you can tell that Sentinel is always on his mind. It's always there, taunting him, haunting him. This is why he was the only one staying back to continuously fight Sentinel rather than go and expose him like what the plan was. The cruel irony of it all is that he hated to be compared to Sentinel, only to become Sentinel. You know what they say, never meet your heroes.
So we're not getting demoted?
Demoted?
Which I guess leads us to D-16's dynamic with Orion Pax. D-16 and Orion Pax's friendship is kind of funny to me, because when you really think about it, in the context of the society that this movie has set up, this was a friendship that was always doomed to fail. The two first met each other on the first day of their mining job, and from that point forward they were brothers in arms, always looking out for one another. But it becomes pretty obvious that these two are very, very different. Orion is always out doing something that would usually get him in trouble, and D-16 always is the one who has to bail him out, or worse, Orion will drag D into trouble. Throughout the movie, we kind of see that, completely unintentionally, Orion has a slight habit of ruining everything for D, or at least D sees it as Orion ruining everything for him, and he is constantly annoyed by it. In fact, after they learned the truth of Sentinel's betrayal, rather than getting upset that they were lied to, D takes it out on Orion, like this was all somehow his fault for breaking the rules again, showing that D would rather live in blissful ignorance, while Orion actually wants to get to the bottom of any of their world's problems. These two are just completely different, especially in how they want to handle situations. Orion wanted to expose Sentinel for his crimes and let the Cybertronian justice system deal with him, but D-16 wanted to literally take matters into his own hands, as the judge and the jury. The two butt heads about this a few times during their adventure before they are separated before the climax of the movie. And this ends up showing that as much as D-16 was always getting Orion out of trouble, how much D needed Orion as this kind of moral compass for him, because without him, well, let's just say he went a little bit off the deep end. The true tragedy of their friendship is how much these two genuinely did care for each other, and how, despite everything, they would never let each other go. Until, you know, one of them did. Which now leads us to D-16's character development. Character development. Funnily enough, much like Orion, D-16's arc in this movie is surprisingly simple and straightforward when you break it down. In the beginning, he starts off like basically everyone else in Iacon City, content with his life and seeing no reason to question the system that they abide by. I mean, why should they? D-16's very first scene in the movie is him bailing Orion out of trouble, and this apparently is not the first time this has happened. Though despite this, the two are definitely close, as Orion even ends up giving D a Megatronus Prime decal, which is the Prime that D looks up to the most. But yeah, getting back to the whole bailing Orion out of trouble, we see this dynamic throughout the beginning parts of the movie, whether it be D trying to get Orion out of trouble, or Orion getting them both in trouble. Despite the differences though, you can tell that D-16, even in this content state, does have a bit of that spark in him that wants more, and just wants to also do good. Like how he stayed behind with Orion to save Jazz when the mines were collapsing, or how after a bit he did start getting into the Icon 5000. The Icon 5000 is also a pretty good moment in showing off how these two, despite any disagreements they might get into, always do come through and stick together at the ending, no matter what happens. Especially when they, lose the race. But even then, D-16 himself confirms that he did have fun doing it. Even more so when he gets quote-unquote praise from Sentinel Prime for what they did.
With Sentinel Prime, sir, we joined the race to show everyone our potential. That weak bots can do more than just mine energy.
Outstanding. I love a bot that can think for himself.
It really goes to show that even with the way Sentinel's acting, and the more obvious way Arachnid is acting, that D does not believe for a second that they are being tricked. So when Darkwing ends up throwing them down to sub-level 50, where they end up meeting Keegan-Michael B, D 100% believes that this was all just a wacky misunderstanding, and that Sentinel himself will come down and get them. And not that it was a setup to get rid of them.
I'm waiting right here until Sentinel Prime finds us.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, we'll just stay here forever.
This helps us seeing not only how brainwashed D-16 is compared to the other main characters, but also showing how much he yearns for praise. When you really look at it, he's the only one of this main group that really wants praise from their superiors. All the others don't really care too much, maybe Alita, but she was the superior to some of the miners, so it would be her giving the praise. D is the only one who's 100% yearning for people above him to telling him that he's doing good. So when they end up finding a supposed map to the matrix of leadership, while D at first doesn't want to go up to the surface and potentially break the rules again, it doesn't take much persuasion from Orion saying that he'll get praise from Sentinel if he brings him the matrix. That, and I also don't think you want to be stuck down there with B and Peel.
There's plenty of room now that Steve is dead. I usually sleep on the conveyor belt, but you can totally have it. I'll sleep in the corner next to Aatron. Plenty of room for you guys to stretch out.
When their quest begins, all he can think about is what he's going to say when he gives the Matrix to Sentinel, and how Sentinel's going to react and praise him for such a noble deed. Of course, all of that ends up changing when... You know how some people say it was like ice water splashing on their face? Well, this is like if that ice water was completely frozen solid. He just got hit in the face with an ice slab. Now, some people say D-16's jump to the dark side was a little rushed after finding out the truth, but I'm gonna have to hard disagree with that. In fact, I think his jump makes a lot of sense. When you really think about it, Orion, Alita, and B all had some form of discontentment with the system that they were living in. But D was completely enthralled with it. He saw no reason that this could even be a possibility, and now that he knows it's the truth, he doesn't know how to comprehend it, so of course he went straight to violence. But I do like how at first he tries to blame Orion for all this.
You just had to do it, didn't you?
Me? What did I do?
You just had to go to the surface, had to enter the Icon 5000, you just had to break protocol.
Like somehow it's Orion's fault that he isn't living in blissful ignorance anymore. But it's too late now. Now that he knows the truth, he can't unknow the truth. D ends up believing he has to do something about it. And not in the same way his friend wants to do something about it.
Don't you want to stop him?
No, I want to kill him!
And one thing I like is that D's desire to kill didn't really come out of nowhere. There were a few times where he was joking about it earlier in the movie.
I'd transform into a shovel and beat you. What if I kill you for waking me up?
No,
If you make me miss any part of the Icon 5000, I swear I will smelt your face right off. we survive this, I'm gonna kill you!
It kinda helped to foreshadow his violent tendencies, shown even more so where after Alpha Trion gives them their transformation cogs, the others are happy they now have the ability to transform, while D-16 is happy that he has the ability to kill. He can now take his future into his own hands, the way he sees fit. And rather unfortunately, the way he sees fit is a very violent way. And this here was truly the beginning of the end for him. He now knows his violent tendencies can be acted upon, and this is proven further with his very next interaction with Orion being...
I got it. Okay.
His ability to trust anyone has been so shaken up that he barely even trusts his own best friend anymore. His fight with Starscream is also very important in showing this, as aside from being love at first sight, it really goes to show how far gone D-16 is in anger, as he, who has no real prior knowledge of fighting, is pretty quickly and thoroughly able to beat Starscream, the captain of the High Guard, all guided through his blind rage. And one thing I also love about this scene, of how D-16 gets the High Guard, who would later become the Decepticons, to listen to him by literally dragging them down to his level. They're all taller than him, but they all end up feeling beneath him, which is what earns Soundwave and Shockwave's undying loyalty. And the reason why I bring this up is because when you look at how Orion later gets the miners that would become the Autobots to follow him, he goes down to their level to bring them up. It's just so perfect. This could also be seen as an allegory for seeing your friend fall into the wrong crowd, as this is the last time D-16 and Orion interact for a while. After D, B, and the Seekers end up getting captured and brought to Sentinel, you could say this is where D-16 is at his lowest, but not yet. It's only after Sentinel takes the Megatronus Prime decal that Orion gave to D, and then burns it onto his body, is where D is at his lowest point. And little did Sentinel know is that by doing this one act, he ended up creating a more dangerous monster than he could ever hope to dream to be. And of course D is livid by this, shown by even after all of that, he refuses to stay down and was willing to be shot point blank in the face, then give Sentinel the satisfaction of kneeling before him. But then Orion and Alita show up with the High Guard and the miners, the only time these two sides will ever work together. But during what should be their final battle against Sentinel, where once again Orion, B, and Alita try to just expose Sentinel for his crimes, D-16 just refuses to join them and is just locked on in wanting to kill Sentinel. And after Sentinel's treachery was exposed, and now that he has his back turned, D-16 was able to rip off his wings, getting him into a weakened state, and we come to what I can consider the end of D-16. Before D can kill Sentinel, Orion jumps in to save him. No, not Sentinel, D-16. Orion does not want to see his best friend finally cross the point of no return. That one act that will put him too far over the line that saving him will be seen as impossible. Unfortunately, Orion compares D to Sentinel, which, while is true, was the last thing D-16 wanted to hear. He goes in for the shot and... he grabs Orion's barely alive body, asking why. Not why he jumped in front of him, but why did he shoot him? Why did he kill his friend? His best friend, who has caused him nothing but trouble, and more trouble. Trouble he has always had to bail him out of. Until now.
I'm done saving you.
Now, with the one person in his way dead, D-16 has finally crossed that forbidden line, ripping Sentinel clean in half without a second thought, taking Megatronus' T-Cog and claiming himself as the new leader. Which, ironically, is exactly what Sentinel did. He killed the old leaders, took Megatronus' T-Cog, and claimed himself as the new one, but now under a new, more fitting name.
I am Megatron!
But now he's a warmonger without a war to fight. So what is there to do now? Simple. Destroy everything that could even resemble Sentinel's likeness. Anyone who does not bow down to him clearly is still working for Sentinel and is a traitor to Cybertron. Megatron begins to go on a rampage with Starscream, Soundwave, and Shockwave all on his side. But luckily, Orion Pax's sacrifice to save his friend resulted in their god, Primus, deeming him worthy of the lost legendary Matrix of Leadership, reformatting him into Optimus Prime. Optimus returns to save the day, and I love this part from Megatron.
Impossible. Primus gave you the Matrix.
The fact that he's confused to why Primus gave his friend the Matrix and not him, like somehow he thinks he's worthy and now deserving of it. Once again, leading into those Sentinel parallels. The two have their first of many final battles, and afterwards Optimus has no choice but to banish Megatron, his friend turned enemy, telling him to take the high guard and leave. Megatron claims that this is not over and that they will be back, as he and the High Guard retreat. And with them gone and the Matrix found, Optimus is able to restore the flow of Energon to the rest of Cybertron and giving all the miners back their T-Cogs, reorganizing this faction into the heroic Autobots. However, Megatron, vowing revenge for what has happened, for the betrayal of his best friend, reorganizes the High Guard, branding all of them with the symbol of Megatronus Prime, turning what used to be a heroic symbol of one of their leaders in this canon into a symbol of hatred and destruction, as he renames his army the insidious Decepticons.
We will not be blinded by his deception. We are the ones who are Decepticons!
And his arc ends on that note. Final thoughts. The story from D-16 to Megatron is, in my eyes, a perfect cautionary tale, showing what rage and anger can do to someone, have they let it completely take over and cloud their better judgment. But I also think his story works so well because of how, despite being a robot, human D-16 is. At the beginning of his story, in his society, he's just a guy, an everyman. Just someone doing their regular 9-to-5, not really questioning their society or aspiring really to do anything bigger. The most he wants is just praise from his superiors. He ends up feeling relatable. In fact, that's what ends up making his turn to the dark side feel relatable. Now obviously everyone knows what D-16 is doing is wrong, and we get to see how ultimately wrong it is, but it's the type of wrong that is understandably wrong. We understand Megatron through this story. And it also works as a really good allegory for friends breaking apart, especially when it's two friends who don't want to split apart. But sometimes there's nothing you can do except just sit there and watch your friend go down a path you just can't follow. And you can't pull them out of it no matter how hard you try, because their emotions rule all. And while this version of Megatron is different from other versions of the character, it really does make me put those other versions into perspective, wondering how they'd be like had they had similar experiences to this one. But at the same time, it's really interesting to see that this enraged, stone-cold, calculated leader started off as just a guy, friends with the one who would one day become his biggest enemy, and just guided by his emotions and went too far. I guess, in a way, you could say that the most feared instrument of destruction ultimately scares himself the most.
Rise up!
And that's the character skeleton of Megatron. Oh, you're still here? Well, since you stuck around for this long, you might as well like and subscribe, comment if you're feeling really daring. And while you're at it, you might as well follow me on Twitter and Instagram at jayskeletyn. Links down below. And if you just want to see more, you can check out the playlists or look at my last video. Now thanks for watching, and if you need me, I'm going back to bed.